The Nintendo Switch has once again pulled off the RPG impossible. Now, and I've talked about this before, it's almost turned into some type of series on my channel, but in the newest thing that we're going to discuss here, this is something that most people aren't talking about at all when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. And I'm not going to sit here and say I was right about that and kind of say, oh my gosh, I got this right, but it is something that I felt very strongly about before the Nintendo Switch launched, and some of the issues with the Nintendo Wii U and not having an adequate amount of RPGs to facilitate long-term playing and dedicated fans. And that was just one of the big issues among many with the Nintendo Wii U that was fixed with the Nintendo Switch. But now we're getting into the territory after 6 years plus or so of the Switch that this is the impossible when it comes to anything that's been considered a Nintendo home console, with the amount of RPG sales that the Nintendo Switch has acquired. And honestly, it's quite staggering. Once again, nobody's really talked about this in the media. But before we get into that, guys, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my Nintendo Switch and RPG videos first. Now let's go ahead and jump right into this, because I was going over the CESA sales for 2023, which is giving us updates, of course, for Nintendo's first party, which Nintendo does already give, but also a lot of games outside of the top 10. So it tallies up all that. Some of them go to the end of 2022, some of them go to the first quarter of 2023, but overall, it's pretty up to date when it comes to what Nintendo has sold. And I scrolled down the list, kind of looking at various different games and analyzing how the games have been doing. And one thing that really stood out compared to everything else that I saw was the amount of RPGs that are logged first party wise or first party published from Nintendo on the Nintendo Switch, just the amount and the total overall. Now, this is a mind-blowing stat, guys. This is impossible. I don't think it's ever been done for a first party developer, console manufacturer on a platform. Nintendo has sold over 115 million Nintendo Switch first party RPG games on the platform. I went back and looked at some of their previous systems that have done the best: the Nintendo Wii, the Nintendo DS, the Game Boy Advance, and I couldn't tally up anywhere near the amount of first party RPGs that have done this well, especially with the home console. Heck, I had to go to the Nintendo portables in order to find anything that was even comparable at all, which was the Nintendo DS. But if you're talking about home consoles, the Nintendo Wii, not even close. The Nintendo GameCube, clearly not even close. When it comes to the NES, not close. N64, there was barely any RPGs on that platform. So this is something not only impossible for Nintendo home consoles, but also impossible even when you include in the portable range. Now, the Nintendo DS does come somewhat close because of all the Pokemon games that were released on that platform, but first party wise, Nintendo has just been killing it with the RPGs and RPG publishing. And once again, this was something that I felt incredibly strongly about, to the point where I was memed and almost made fun of from my peers at the time that I was kind of like doing videos with and stuff. They were always laughing because I was always talking about how Nintendo needs more RPGs. RPGs need to be a little bit more of the focus. Yes, you have The Legend of Zelda. Yes, you have Mario. Yes, you have Smash Brothers, and you have Animal Crossing and all of these great games, Mario Kart, and I get that. And remember, these sales don't include The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom. I didn't count them as RPGs in the sales here. But it's one of those things where I was very critical of Nintendo with that. They need to increase that. And obviously combining the home console and the portable helped out quite a bit, because now all of those portable franchises that we usually see go to the Nintendo 3DS are now on the Nintendo Switch. So stuff like Pokemon, Fire Emblem, these are games, these are franchises that were portable only for the most part with the 3DS and the Wii U when it comes to the mainline entries. And now Nintendo's getting big releases in those. And Pokemon in general is the big one here, because Pokemon has sold nearly 100 million units on its own when it comes to first party RPGs. Pokemon Sword and Shield, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, that's about at 50 million right there just by itself, before you even include Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, Pokemon Legends Arceus. But even if you don't include those, some of the stuff they've been able to do with stuff like Fire Emblem Three Houses selling over 4 million, stuff like Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity as well, 4 million, Xenoblade Chronicles Chronicles 2, 2.7 million, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 combining for over 3 million units. Stuff like Miitopia brought over, Fire Emblem Engage over 1.6 million units, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, Astral Chain. It's been a lot more when it comes to what they've been able to do with the RPG sales, and their two big RPG franchises outside of Pokemon, which would be Xenoblade Chronicles and Fire Emblem. So I'm very, very happy about that. And once again, no other Nintendo system has done this. I don't think any other system has done this from a first-party perspective. It just hasn't been done. Of course, Microsoft hasn't done it. Nobody's had enough big hitters when it comes to RPGs to be able to challenge what the Nintendo Switch has done with first-party RPGs. So that's pretty cool. Once again, a pretty big record that nobody's really talked about, which it's understandable. It's RPGs, right? Not everybody's going to talk about something like that or even try to seek out that type of information. But you know we're going to do that right here on PlayerEssence. Now, let's talk about a couple other things because I found this stuff to be very interesting, especially heading into what Nintendo's going to do next. So the third-party situation is something that is always an ongoing debate. Obviously, Nintendo Switch doesn't get every single third-party game. It misses out on some of the big third-party games, and it's missed out on some big RPGs like Scarlet Nexus and Tales of Arise, for example. However, if you look at what Nintendo's done in the past when it comes to what they've gotten compared to with the Nintendo Switch, this is 10 times better, and that's actually no cap here, guys. I am not exaggerating. Nintendo has done considerably better with RPGs on the Nintendo Switch than any other platform that they've ever had. Stuff like Persona, for example, Shin Megami Tensei, Dragon Ball Z, Octopath, The Witcher, Skyrim, Atelier, Ys, Trials, Mana Series, Disgaea, all of these franchises that would be barely on Nintendo platforms or have weird little spin-offs or certain things, all of those got main series on the Nintendo Switch compared to never getting those on Nintendo's previous systems. And the RPG variations of stuff like Dragon Ball Kakarot, for example, which is, yeah, I get it. That's obviously not a game that's super highly rated or anything, but those games actually really do sell. People love those anime and Dragon Ball Z and Naruto games and stuff like that. And those things were missing on the Nintendo Wii U, and there was weird or different types of spin-offs on the 3DS, not the main games. So for the Nintendo Switch to actually get those this time is huge. To get stuff like Persona and not a Persona Q or something different or a dancing game, which they've never got, but something else outside of the main series, to get Persona 3, Persona 4, and Persona 5 all on the Nintendo Switch, and those sell incredibly well, is a very big thing that's going to snowball into what we're going to talk about in just a bit. But I love to see stuff like the Mana series have new life on the Nintendo Switch. Disgaea almost kind of make the jump from PlayStation to Nintendo. The E series kind of also not making the jump, but you're starting to see the shifting of sales. Atelier has completely shifted over to selling more on the Nintendo Switch now, where that was a PlayStation franchise before. Stuff like Witcher, Skyrim, those have never been on Nintendo platforms. Those came over, so this is definitely a good thing. And of course, seeing Shin Megami Tensei, a franchise that really has had some history on Nintendo, obviously with SMT4 and SMT4 Final, but never really selling anywhere near the million mark, or at least getting close, I think, with SMT4, selling over 1.1 million units in the first 5 months that was available on the Nintendo Switch. That is a huge boom. That is a huge change to the dynamics of what Nintendo's doing and the confidence that third-party developers are going to have with Nintendo right now at this point with their games that they can bring over, in addition to what they're going to do next. And that's the snowball effect that I'm talking about, because Nintendo had no momentum coming off the Nintendo 3DS and the Nintendo Wii U. Like, literally no momentum. Barely anybody trusted them with that system. A lot of them thought that they were going to fail. Heck, even the Pokemon company came out and said they weren't sure about the Nintendo Switch. But Nintendo proved all of them wrong, obviously having that huge hit at the beginning with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, then hitting us with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, then hitting us with ARMS and Splatoon. All of that really drove confidence in the platform and really started the effect that we see right now at this point with the RPGs and with the games coming. Even still to this point, with the Nintendo Switch being underpowered compared to the competition out there, it's still getting some games here and there. There's still announcements in its 6/7th year. So that's something that you absolutely want to see, because it's confidence that the publishers and that the third-party developers and Nintendo all have in the platform, and yes, transferring over to what they're going to do next. So let's talk about that just a bit here, the plan for Nintendo's next gen, because I think all of this kind of plays a part into it when it comes to the RPGs, when it comes to Pokemon, Fire Emblem, Xeno, Monolith Soft, all of that good stuff. It all plays a part into the success of an ecosystem and a platform and having games for a variety of gamers out there. So a consistent flow of games, first and third party wise, that is very important for Nintendo heading into the next generation, but also not overloading. You don't want to see everything dump trucked on the Nintendo Switch 2 in the first month or so. You don't want to repeat the same situation that happened with the Wii U, but then again, you don't want the releases to be too spread out, so you have to make sure that you really pair things one by one. Put up a couple different big third-party games sprinkled in and out, like the Nintendo Switch got with Disgaea and certain things here and there in the first number of months. Then of course have your big heavy hitters that are also in there. Have that big 3D Mario game, have that big Mario Kart game, have that next big Donkey Kong or whatever else you're doing. Have those Nintendo Directs to keep people excited. The flow of what they do first and third-party wise is so important to the ecosystem and to the success of a system. So Nintendo needs to keep that Nintendo Switch pace going with the Nintendo Switch 2. Obviously keeping development costs lower and increasing what they can do. I really hope Nintendo has increased the capacity of the cartridges and lowered the cost of those. That technology has to be cheaper by this point, and I'm really hoping that Nintendo has found a solution for high capacity cards at good prices, because the rumor is, or at least what's going on, that it's still going to be a modular hybrid system with the Switch 2 or the next system, and it's going to take cartridges. That has been confirmed by two sources that are incredibly accurate with what they usually say, and that is Eurogamer, which I'll never challenge again when it comes to Nintendo Switch hardware, got bodied with the Nintendo Switch, and that's also VGC. So I do think that it is going to take cartridges. I do think that it is going to have a high capacity card, and they're going to have to try to keep costs down some way or another, and I hope they figured that out, because they had some issues with the Nintendo Switch cartridges and the prices of those and the amount of space on them, because those 32GB cartridges were so seldom used. They've got to get better in that area. Now, next up, improve what you did, but add in some new wrinkles. I personally feel something like having a complete integration of smartphones into the Nintendo Switch 2 can be huge. So let's say you're playing the Nintendo Switch 2 out and about and you have a friend that wants to play. Well, they can just their smartphone as a controller and play local co-op right there with you, instead of having the Joy-Cons and having to detach them and play it that type of way. You can have it to where you can still have someone playing and using the Joy-Cons and playing, and then also having somebody else play with a smartphone, or maybe somebody else as well. 3-4 people kind of add in. We saw a little bit of that with the game Everybody Want to Switch. Yes, the game's not that great, but it had some really interesting integration with smartphones to where anybody can play the game right there. So I think that Nintendo's going to take that technology and kind of expand that to where you're going to be able to browse the eShop right there hooked up to your system and send data back and forth. I think that the Splatnet and all the different Nintendo Switch Online apps and all that needs to be accessible, not necessarily playable from the smartphones. Maybe they do it remote play or something, but just have it to where you can look through everything, you can add the games, and have it to where it's fast and easy. Sometimes the Nintendo Switch is fast in certain things, but then it's slow when it comes to the eShop and browsing and inputting things, so that needs to be sped up. I think having full smartphone integration can greatly improve the flow of the system. So I hope that happens, and also whatever else they're going to do when it comes to new things or new wrinkles with the system. Next up, you got to make sure that you win Japan. That is super important. With a hybrid system, you got to win Japan. Nintendo has sold 30 million systems in Japan by itself. That is the first time that any system has done that since the Nintendo DS. It's been a hot minute since we've seen a system sell 30 million. Do not listen to all these weird people that are sitting there and saying that Japan is dead and who cares about it. No, Nintendo does. There's plenty of money to be made. There's plenty of systems to be sold. It is alive and vibrant. We saw what Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is doing. We saw what some of these other big games like Animal Crossing and Mario Kart and Smash Brothers can all do. Nintendo, win Japan, keep going there, keep doing well there. And when I mean win, just do the best that you can. Keep on selling a lot of systems and making sure that Japanese games and the Japanese game development is healthy for your developers, because that's where you guys live. That's where the root of all these games come from. So the Japanese game market needs to be healthy. So keep on doing that with the hybrid. Next up is prioritize the devote base games. Fire Emblem, Xenoblade, obviously Pokemon, stuff like that all needs to be improved and brought back and bigger, better than ever. Because these games, especially with Xenoblade or Fire Emblem and games from Intelligent Systems, Monolith Soft, they might not sell up to what Zelda and Pokemon does and all that, but they make a lot of money because the fans are very passionate. They'll buy merch, they'll buy t-shirts, they'll buy all this different type of stuff. They'll buy DLC. They will really go into the game when you release it. So I think that prioritizing that as well, making sure that those developers have what they need for their big next Nintendo Switch 2 games is going to be very vital as well. And last, but definitely not least, those PS4 titles that skip the Switch, obviously making sure that those get good marketing, make sure that those get out there and people understand that you can play those titles on the Nintendo Switch Portable anywhere that you want without all of the headaches with the Steam Deck or certain stuff like that, but physical as well for those who want those physical cartridges. So that's going to be important, and that's why it ties back to what I said with the development cost and the higher capacity cartridges, so third-party developers can get that done and not worry about, oh my gosh, we're spending an arm and a leg on these cartridges compared to what they spent on the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5. So those are my thoughts when it comes to Nintendo doing the Switch Impossible, the RPG Impossible with it. What are your thoughts when it comes to everything that I talked about here? And what would you like to see when it comes to other RPGs breaking out, series coming back, Golden Sun, maybe some stuff like that? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Also, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other videos right here on screen where I talked about the top 25 Nintendo Switch games, went over some cool Xenosaga potential for the Nintendo Switch, and more. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you for the next one. Peace.